You.
I am excellent, thank you. Happy Monday.
Hey, buddy.
Happy Monday to you.
I'm going to start letting some people in here.
How's the family?
Very good, thank you. How about
How's
you?
Good, good. Thank you. We had a good Father's Day.
Oh, happy Father's Day. I was just going to say. Hi, Eric. Happy Father's Day.
Happy
Hi,
Father's Day.
Eric.
Thank you. I'm a really good dad.
Well, to Justin and Carlos, anyway.
Hey,
All good.
Everybody having a good day?
How about you? All good?
All
Excellent.
good.
Hi, Dana.
I have issues. Good morning or afternoon or wherever you all are.
We all have
well,
issues, my friend. Good
Oh
morning
my
to
gosh.
you.
Hey, Justin, I'm going to Teotihuacan tomorrow with my husband for 5 days, 6 days.
Fun.
Yeah, I'll let you know what I experience. I haven't, and they sell these obsidian hearts, so I thought of you. I'll bring one back. And for your kids so they don't steal yours.
They won't steal it. They
I'm
ask
gonna
about it.
get I'm gonna get them some cool ones. They're really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
climb the pyramid of the moon.
I'm gonna do the whole Miguel journey deal. But yeah, you've been there?
Many times. Amazing, amazing experiences.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's cool. We should talk.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I have some data to give you that might be useful.
Ah, very cool. Yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years. It's a long time. But yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, fascinating place.
Everyone's autopilots just entered the room. Hello, hello. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Okay. Justin, do you want me to go ahead and start, even though people are still coming in?
Wait, I just posted the Zoom links and got multiple text messages saying people didn't have it. So I'd wait one more minute.
Okay.
Sarah. It's Brant.
Hi, Brant. How are you? Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
What's up, Justin?
My great
Everyone, this
friend.
is Brant. I don't know if anybody's met Brant yet because he's been traveling since he joined, but this is
Hey,
Brant.
Brant,
Brant.
welcome.
Hey,
Thank
I've
Brent.
you. Hi,
I've
everybody.
met I've met Brant. Brant's
Oh, okay,
awesome.
good. I was
Super
just going to
stoked to
say
have
that
him.
Brant and Anthony should have like a 6 hour conversation because you guys have the same vibe.
I think we
Yeah.
cut it off at 2 hours, but
Okay.
we'll have another two or three
Really?
sessions and we'll
It's
get up
gonna
to
be
your
longer
six
than
hours.
that.
That
Is that
sounds
a record?
accurate.
Hopefully that's a record. Who knows?
I was like people just being nice to each other.
Yeah. Where do we start? Let's just dive in.
I love it. Love it, love it. Okay, just making sure. Sorry, you guys, I have to filter through a lot of autopilots. No, autopilots. No. All right. All right, we're going to start with just a couple announcements. I know I don't usually make announcements in Epic Labs, but just because we just posted the links on Mighty to for the September event. FYI, Dana, yes, you were the first to respond. Thank you. So you can go ahead and register for coming to our September Chicago event through Mighty. Let me know if you have any questions on how to do that. There's the event on the 12th, and then the 13th is an optional philanthropy day, which will have more information. Randy and I are working on that right now. The night before the event, the 11th, is a special VIP night. I'll give you guys the scoop now. I'm going to email you all out. But we have secured an evening with, oh my gosh, Justin. I'm losing his name.
Rick Bayless.
Thank you, Rick Bayless. We are going to do, thank you, a 5-course tasting menu in his personal test kitchen with him doing a demo, talking with us. It's going to be awesome. The VIP event is a paid event, so it's $1,000 a person. Everything will be through Mighty Networks, and I will give you all more information about that later. The September 12th and 13th are already included. So I will send you out everything, but I just wanted to let you guys know that's all coming, and please look through on Mighty. Let me know if you have any questions. Cool.
Are spouses welcome, Sarah, if they are not in the group?
Yeah,
Or-
so spouses can come
Okay.
to certain parts of it.
Okay.
If you want your spouse to come to the whole thing, just reach out to me later. There's a separate way to do that, but spouses are welcome to come to certain parts of it. The Thursday night will be a really nice party at the yacht club with an awesome magician, actually, and that is totally fine if your spouse wants to come to that. It's the speakers that we do charge extra for.
No problem. Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. All right. Justin, I think you wanted to do a quick intro before Eric, so
Oh
I
yeah.
will leave it
Quick
to
thing.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just finished The Little Prince. For those who haven't read it, I strongly recommend it. Here it is. Really, really good. Came out in 1943, and then the author of the book died in a plane crash the next year. It's a beautiful book. And the best quote that I've seen so far is, "Here is my secret. It's quite simple. One sees clearly only with the heart. Anything essential is invisible to the eyes." So one sees clearly only with the heart. And then it's very similar to The Alchemist book, which is another classic. And Eric's going to do a better intro for Carlos than me, but Carlos is he's the Little Prince and he's the alchemist, and in one living person, the Little Prince and the alchemist. So it's a real honor to have him here. Go ahead, Eric. All you.
So The Little Prince is also a film. It's really good too. It's a kids movie. For those of you who don't want to read The Little Prince. So I'll talk quickly and then let Carlos can introduce himself and tell you about his background and everything way better than I can. But back right after I had my first son, I had wrapped up a couple of companies. It was like right during COVID. And some of you know this story, some of you don't, but I just put the investor hat on for a while and just committed to curiosity and learning. And I did this because, as we all know here, building companies is really, really hard. Building a family is really, really hard. And I wanted to focus on just one of them, and it was building a family. And so as I was following curiosity, I started looking at different industries and different areas of interest of mine. And every time I looked at like a big world problem, like a lot of the visionaries here, we go to like Abundance 360 in these events, and it's find a problem that helps 1 billion people, and you can make $1 billion, right? That's the concept. And so as I started looking for problems, I kept coming up with this question, who am I? And it was a question I was looking at the bottom like of the barrel of all these problems like in the world is, shouldn't we be asking this question more? And as I started asking that question externally and looking at industries and all like the war and strife in the world and everything, I started realizing like, okay, wait a minute, I'm externalizing this, but I haven't asked it myself. And so it was crazy. As soon as I realized that really what I was asking is, who am I put on an event and I met somebody, and like within, I don't know, weeks, I was introduced to Carlos. And I didn't know this at the time, but once I was introduced to him, I got sent a few books. I didn't read them right away, and I decided to go to one of his retreats. And then I, as ADHD last minute type of person would do, picked up the books and started cramming them as fast as possible. And one of them, of course, was titled, "Who Do You Think You Are?" And it was like, I saw the fit. It was just like a perfect fit. So met Carlos, started working closely with Carlos it's been a few years now. And my personal development or self-exploration journey through my teens, 20s, like early entrepreneurship, everything, like read all the books, business coaches, everything. All I did programs, I went to retreats, I do all the things. The most accelerated self-awareness, personal development tool that I have found is Carlos Warder. His journey. So I'll post 2 of his books in the chat, if that's okay, Justin. I won't talk about his personal journey because it's in the books, and I would encourage anybody to read Carlos. I think it's Recovery of the Sacred is more along the lines of your personal journey. His life is a testament to integrity, to service, to humanity, and every step of the way in working with Carlos, I have felt nothing but love and nothing but him working from his heart. And it has been just an exponential experience for me in my own development. So with that, Carlos.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I think both Eric and Justin exaggerate. I'm just a human being trying to become a human being, trying to discover what humanity really means. From very early on in my childhood, I had experiences of what people call past lives. And when my grandfather passed away, I had made a commitment to myself and to God, or what I believe God was at the moment, that I would eat it. I was 8 years old. I would eat a chewing gum and chew on it all night, but please don't take my grandpa. So God disappointed me, and I knew God was not a businessman of transaction. A different relationship to find out. But curiously enough, he appeared. He appeared to me and told me it's all okay. Life doesn't end. Life continues. And I told my parents, and my parents told me, keep it quiet, don't speak about it in public. So you've just become private friends to me because I'm sharing it with you guys. And this is not in public, but in private. My life evolved that way. I wanted to help people. I'm going to give you a little biographical rundown. I went to medical school. I was a good student. I graduated with honors. I ended up in Harvard. And everything in the academic life was beautiful. But something was missing. And I happened to have a love affair, which, as it's common, opened my heart to domains that I hadn't experienced before. I was, 24, 25 years old. I had just finished medical school, and I was beginning my internship, and I ended up writing a journal. Are you guys interested in this, or should I go to more technical things? Please feel free to interrupt me and ask me questions at any time. I don't want to divide this into me being a talking head and you being listening, but I want to have more of an interaction of your interests. So I wrote a journal, and the journal disappeared and was taken by a friend of mine to a poet which you might know. Have you heard of Pablo Neruda? Anybody heard of Neruda? Chilean Nobel laureate back in the early 70s. And Neruda I didn't know, but one day he called me, I get a phone call and he says, Carlos, and I say, who is this? Pablo. I said, Pablo who? And in a melodious voice, he said, Pablo Neruda. I've read your work. I've written a preface. I got you a publisher. God almighty, that was too much. It was fantastic. I had a bestseller before I finished my internship. And it was a time, I'm from Chile. I was delivered in Chile. I say delivered because I always say I was born in heaven. I was conceived in Eastern Europe, in Austria actually, and was delivered in Chile. So my traveling experience starts prenatal. And the book did very well. I assume it did very well because I had his preface, not because of my magic, but it was also good from my magical point of view, since in my experience of 55 years next year after having it published, I haven't changed my mind about what I experienced there in one little thing. And the rest of my life has been experiencing and sharing with others. I became a psychiatrist. I got a PhD in psychology. I got a doctorate in philosophy. I mean, all that academically was nice and proper. But what I said to myself, how come in medicine of the 20th century, that was last century, there is no spiritual avenue. There is only technical. We think we're a machine. So I spent a lot of time studying with masters of the East, amongst other Sufis. You've heard of Sufis? Mystical Islamists in Morocco, and with the Dalai Lama in northern India, and with swamis and yogis and gurus, which really demonstrated to me that what I had experienced and what I was experiencing wasn't nuts. It was in line with every spiritual tradition. So I had to do a control test in joining different situations to find out where I was at. And for the next 50 years, I've been working with people. As Eric says, what animates me is love. What animates me is the understanding that we are one species. We might have different characteristics, each one of us, different interests, different belief system. All that is valid. But in the nature of reality of who we are is one species. And it's a strange species. It's a species that is self-destructive. You know, the amount, $1 trillion in defense industry, just to, when used, create havoc and destruction. And when not used, it's a poor investment. So I do these retreats that Eric mentions a couple of times a year, a few times a year. And if anything that I'm going to say, or we're going to interact in the next hour that we have together, take a look at it, because the next one is coming up in July 11, and it's going to be the ever best one for reasons that I will explain later. So any comments or questions so we can start a dialogue? If you're shy, don't be shy. If you think this is not worth it, don't ask any questions.
None of you guys are shy. Someone start something.
Carlos, this is John. I'll just jump in and start the dialogue here.
Where are you? Let me see. Can you raise your hand? I got you. Got you. Yes.
Hey, I appreciate the share. I had a similar experience myself in the hospital when I had a 5% chance of living. And, you know, at the time, people were like, you had way too much medicine. But I truly believe it was a miracle. And God took me aside, took me above the planet, the universe, with basically the Dalai Lama, the four heads, and my father. And he said, you know, son, I've got a path for you, and it's just to share love and wisdom and knowledge and be a good friend. And he's like, that's it. And he's like, if you can just do that and just have faith in me, everything else will work out. I'm not going to tell you how it's going to work out, but it's going to work out. And the more I've been able to embrace that in my life, it just allows me to live in the now. And it really does come back to just love and connections and whatnot, because we all are one. And, you know, when you think about time and this and that, and, you know, for me, my higher power is God. And it's like, you know, I'm in Hawaii right now, and we were at Mount Mauna Kea the other day, looking at these stars that are coming at us from 250 billion years old. And, you know, the one that's the furthest out they're like, yeah, this one probably's got life. It's got water. It's got all this stuff. And it's taken 250 billion years to get here. So for me, you know, besides that interaction, and then you just look at our universe and how beautiful it is. It really is incredible. And to your point, once you just kind of surrender, these little things start happening, and you just know it's not your doing. And the lack you can attach to something and just let yourself flow in the universe, the more good stuff happens. So I appreciate you, your vulnerability and what you've done for people.
I appreciate your sharing, and I can relate 100% to it, but really 100%. Two examples, if you want to hear them. When I was between 13 and 14, I was studying, I was doing my high school homework, and there was a little, I have it here, no, I have it somewhere, a little Baroque clock. And the clock was pointing 3 o'clock, 5 past 3, 10 past 3. And I fell into a space that you mentioned of nowness. My basic thought process in German, and the word now in German is jetzt. So I would say jetzt, and this clock would move, but I was still in the now. And then it moved again, and I was still in the now. And we are always in the now. And as we're always in the now, it helped me a lot with my boards, because even if I didn't know the answer, I centered myself in what I call the present centeredness and passed them very well. On the other hand, when you mentioned in the hospital, I've been in the hospital too much in my life, but not in the hospital. I had a dinner here on a Friday night, and suddenly I'm out of my body, 8 feet above my house, and looking down at my body and at my guests who are getting very nervous because according to the narrative later, my wife says that I wasn't breathing, I was blue, and I wasn't alive. And I'm out there in a beautiful, beautiful place of silver light, of infinite peacefulness and love that welcomed me to stay as long and forever. But I didn't stay because I looked down and I felt that my wife was having a terrible time. And I reversed the energy because I couldn't communicate to them. I couldn't let them know that I was fine. I could perceive them, they couldn't perceive me. So I couldn't establish a communication. And I reversed the energy and out of compassion came back into my cold, cold body. And then, you know, there's more to the story. They called 911. 911 told me I had a heart attack. I told them heart attacks are not without pain. They took me to the hospital. I had a stroke. I didn't have a stroke. So the following week, I was doing a conference in Northern California.
That's very, very similar to my story as well. I was up with our creator and he said, it's not your time yet. And he put me back on earth and I woke up and 2 days later, I walked out of the hospital and all these Western medical doctors were like, well, it's not possible.
Words.
And I said, yeah, it's possible. It just happened. And my nurse, who was my guardian angel, wrote me the nicest note. And she took me out of my handcuffs because I was restrained to the bed. And she said, I could tell you wanted to be free. And we stay in touch to this day.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's beautiful, Carlos.
Who's speaking?
It's Justin. So the main reason that this group or company was created was to find people like us who understood us and could have this conversation. My question for you is, I see you as a master of being able to relate yourself to anyone, no matter who it is. My biggest struggle is doing that, is, you know, communicating with people that don't think or act like this. How have you been able to do that? And I know you said what animates me is love. I understand that. How have you been able to do that for more people and not just a room like this? I would love to know the answer to that. Thank you.
By understanding that I'm no different than anybody and that everybody is on the basic common denominator of wanting to find out more about themselves. As Eric said, find out about who they truly are, regardless of what they have or do. See, this culture, and I'm say something about another culture because I just landed a week and a half ago from a month in Europe. But this culture is so doing oriented and having oriented that it forgets the essence of the beingness, and therefore is continually seeing differences. You know, even though this country, and I'm one of them, is full of migrants, immigrants, and so on, from the beginning on, from the time in which the Brits didn't behave so nice, and some Brits came to the east coast of this continent. There is so much fear. There is so much fear of not having and not doing enough. And therefore, we create separation. We create separation that I and you are not the same. And yes, that could be valid with a lion when we're in the Stone Age and the lion is going to attack us. We're not the same. We need to defend. And the fight-flight response is very practical there. But we live in stress. We live assuming that the other one is not an equal, is not a similar entity. And I remember years ago, I was in the Soviet Union. And I asked the Soviet Union people, the Institute of Philosophy, what are you guys going to do when the Soviet Union disappears? Because you're so separate with each other and with the rest of the world, Cold War and all that. And they were infuriated. The Soviet Union is an empire that's going to last forever. It's never going to disappear. It's a 1,000-year empire. I said, I don't think so. No empire these days lasts 1,000 years. That was 1988. Next time I was in the Soviet Union, I was giving a talk at a conference on healing and holistic medicine, and the end of the Soviet Union was taking place, August of 1991. So when I brought back the videos and all that to my group in Argentina, this psychologist says, now I know the answer to Justin's question. You treat them all, quote, as if they would all be human beings. And I said, no, I don't treat them as if they are human beings. I treat everybody like a human being because we're all in this boat together. And sometimes we resist. We want to have separate personalities, separate actions, and all that is fine. But the bottom line, it's like we're born similarly, we die similarly, and what makes us think that in between, it's a big difference. But Dana Weinberger had a question.
I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey, what you do, how you transform, or is that kind of top secret stuff?
No, nothing is top secret except what they make us believe is top secret. We're having a conversation. You're asking me how the phenomena takes place so that something roots and growth in the individual participates.
Correct.
There are two optional ways. One is creating a context, and the context is very important. That is not just a context about me, mine development, or yours development, but it's a global thing of purpose of living, purpose of life. And sometimes, since now I'm writing a book on it, I can go more public about it. Sometimes I offer non-ordinary states of consciousness facilitated through plant medicine or other things that allow for the individual to look from a different inner reference point. So not as to get hooked on anything, but to look that what is available is what I call not only neurogenesis, but psychogenesis and new egogenesis, so that we can not only change some habits or some customs, but transform the ability of living so that we live instead of survive. And that takes place in a day or two, and then gets integrated in a day or two. And there is no top secret and there is no magic. I use any technique that I have learned, and I've learned a lot, and I've modified them and reframed it. And let me give you an example about the reframe. I had cancer a few years ago, so I was having chemotherapy. And there was one doctor that would come to my room every day and spend an hour. It wasn't my oncologist, it was somebody on shift. A guy in his, I don't know, mid-50s, early 60s. And one day he says, do you wonder why I come and spend so much time with you? And I said, well, I don't wonder, but I appreciate it. And he says, I am doing less for you than you're doing for me. The ability in which you reframe your own life is sensational, and I want to learn that. And he learned it, it wasn't a big thing to do, because I've been given, or I've developed the ability to use everything to the advantage of my soul's journey, not of my journey, but who I am, what I truly am. And that's who you truly are, which is a soul entity and not a mental entity. When we shift that stuff, and instead of relying on the current, I call it CCS. Do you know what CCS means to me?
No, what does it mean?
Commonly conditioned stupidity.
Interesting.
Because we're conditioned, and we're conditioned in stupor, we're conditioned in paralysis, not in excitement, not in growing. And when we have an opening, we think it's the end of the world, and then we stop our own process because we want to ground ourselves, or we want to anchor ourselves. And this is an ongoing process that I call the human promise. The human promise is much larger than the human dream. The human promise is what every sacred tradition has pointed to, the development of certain centers of perceptions and perception and action that are maybe in our brain. I think they're more in our consciousness, which is the asymptotic connection between what we call ourselves and what we call reality, even though we don't know well what reality is, because we have so many constructs and concepts around reality. There is such a thing as reality, which I think is transcendent reality. I don't know if that answers your question, Dana, but along those lines is what I do the work.
It did. I have one more question.
Sure.
What was if you can give us an idea in your personal experience, what was your most transformational experience that you've had so far?
Talking with you this morning.
Oh, I love it. How about the second most? Second, we want some juice.
You know, I've had so many experiences. I gave you a near-death experience when I was talking with John. I gave you a child transcendent view with my grandfather. But my whole life has been a collection of what is called synchronicities of opening to not getting stuck. Let me give you an example of a month ago. I went on my 39th wedding anniversary and my 77th birthday a few weeks ago to Spain on vacation. And I had a plan, as every tourist-minded creature thinks. I'm going to go to this palace and to this mosque and to this. And I was received by a friend of mine that lives here where I live in San Diego, California. And he bought a house and he said, you can stay as long as you want. Well, that was his mistake. Instead of staying 3 days and doing tourism, I had an experience. He sent me to sleep the siesta because I had flown in a long flight to München and then to Barcelona and then to Malaga and then in a plane to Cordoba. Ever been in Cordoba, anybody? Cordoba, Spain? It's really a must. Because what happened is I couldn't take a nap. What I took was a journey inside myself. And the journey inside myself was guided by forces that I don't have a clue where they came from, but I was at the bottom of that earth of Cordoba, and I was seeing Iberian influence, Celt influence, Greek, Roman, Jewish, Muslim, you name it, every culture that had been there in one level of earth, in my experience, was still transmitting something of itself. If we do an analogy, it felt like we go and unbury, we unearth to find palaces and to find constructions, but the life force is still glued to that. And for the next 3 weeks and 3 days, without planning it, my friend introduced me to archaeologists, historians, architects, a lot of cultivated people that showed me that biologically they had embodied all these cultures. And it was such a delight to be able to relate to that. It was a really powerful experience to see that history determines epigenetics and biology, and that we not only inherit trauma, we inherit majesty too. Is that wow enough?
So I have a question, Carlos. This is Brant.
Where are you? Let me see you.
I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Kalamazoo, yeah, the Mitten State. So could it be said that just trying to whittle down exactly what you do, if it goes down to one thing, is it to help others find their purpose? Is it to help someone through a particular problem? Is it to help people become more balanced? So could it be said that your purpose is to help others find theirs, is my first question. And then my second question, have you found that one's purpose changes over their lifetime, or do you think one's purpose remains the same throughout their life?
Good questions. Let me tackle the second one first. I think we have individual purposes that correspond to our dreams. Let's say somebody dreams as a child, he wants to be an architect. And if that dream manifests and we can wiggle ourselves out of the conditioning that says, no, you have to be a widget in the society that you fit in and do those things, then that purpose can manifest. But when you ask me if I'm interested in that, a little bit, I'm more interested in people finding out the purpose of life itself, not the purpose that I dreamed for my life, but what is this really all about and how can I be of service? And when that instrument of service happens, then there are certain elements that leave the area of ambition. It goes into the area of love, into the area of devotion. And not devotion to a thing or an idea or a belief, but devotion for life itself. And that determines determination, that the individual begins to move, not so preoccupied with what the Hindus called ahankar, which translated could be I, me, mine, the personal ego, but a larger ego, the ego of the species, as I said before. And if that determination succeeds, it leads ultimately to consecration, that we make holy our activity. And it doesn't matter if it looks holy, because, you know, religion thinks that is the patrimony of holding holiness. But I think that's the kidnapping of certain notions and values by certain institutions and forms, that every individual is whole, is holy. And therefore, we don't just have to say, Your Holiness, to the Pope or the Dalai Lama. With the two of them, I've had personal relationships in my life. But I can tell you, Brant, Your Holiness, because you're a whole being. And in that sense, we lead to a different place, which is liberation, which the Indians call moksha, liberation. Liberation of what? Liberation from false ignorance, liberation from false ideas, liberation of what we have bought as the definition of the human existence. And when we become a little bit free, because I can't say that I'm fully liberated, but I become a little bit free from the brainwash that has taken place, oh, we breathe deeper, and then we align better with the purpose of living, which is bringing light into the world, not bringing darkness. There is enough intellectual IQ intelligence. We need heart intelligence. And I don't mean emotional intelligence. I mean heart intelligence. We need to open up certain centers in our body that do not happen occasionally when we feel something for another person or a child or a father or a friend, but to feel the path of love that is an ongoing challenge, not to be brainwashed by society. Does that answer your request?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I know the center you're talking about because mine is open 24/7. So I know exactly what you're saying. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, man.
Dr. Warder, this is Mark speaking.
Hi, Mark.
I want to thank you for being here. Just your presence in itself is allowing me to connect to my higher power You somewhat answered this question. I have two questions actually. And one is the fact that I want to get this experience, such a deeper experience where I communicate to my cousin who died 33 years ago. And the only way it seems that I'm able to do this is that I have to go into a breath work. And it's just not a simple breath work. This is a specific practitioner who has to do it in the presence of a group like this, which just happened a month ago. And I've experienced this twice, where I can get, it's the experiences that you're speaking of. And now this is great, but I get so fixated on this is the only path. You've allowed me to see there's so many different, and the people in this group, there's many different ways to get towards that experience. What happens though, as I'm seeing, is that after that experience, I gain this clarity, and I gain a clarity of what needs to be done or who I need to surround myself with. The downfall of this is that I sometimes will get very angry or anxious of anything or anyone that gets me in the path of that outcome or that, that connection that I'm trying to get towards. I guess the question, as you answered, is there's a lot of different paths. And I feel like I've taken psychedelics before, but not in a way where it allows me to connect to a higher power.
Beautiful question. So this relative of yours is a gift to bring you closer to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Psychedelic experience, unfortunately, today is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be, I've been in this training program for the past 55 years, and it requires a set and a setting that creates a context that is not just the use of the psychedelic, but the presence. And you mentioned presence. That is what really makes a difference. I wrote a book called Pathways to the Soul, and I wrote 101 techniques to open your heart. But there are 8.5 billion techniques to open your heart, but no publisher wants to spend that amount of paper. So each individual can find their own path, must find their own path, and not surrender to anything imposed, but discover it from within. And then the anger will disappear, because the anger seems like an external imposition. Were you talking about holotropic breath work?
Yeah. Forceful, breathing in, breathing out through your mouth.
Hyperventilation, a certain
Yes.
way. Yes. It's an interesting technique. It was brought to fruition by Stanislav Grof when LSD wasn't able to be used publicly. Stan Grof is a Czech psychiatrist that has been consistently working in this. He's 88 years old now and still working and still contributing. But it becomes forceful when, as I'm saying, it's imposed and made believe that it's the only path. The only path that exists is you. And if you find somebody that can mirror you back into that, you become very lucky. Question. You have a question there.
I'm looking at your website. I see your paintings and they're beautiful. What I feel from them is love and authenticity and just higher power. My big value is a Japanese word called ichigo ichie, which is a high level of presence, where this maximum appreciation of the moment. And I feel like this is so serendipitous because of the fact that I just got into Japanese calligraphy meditation. I feel like, can you talk about the art and what that means to you in terms of, it looks like you actually, when you're doing the art, correct me if I'm wrong, you're having these wonderful experiences as well, tapping into your higher power.
You're very perceptive. I have to add that I'm colorblind.
Whoa.
So I don't know what I'm painting. I allow spirit to guide me and paint it through. And sometimes, like now, I have a painting for months sitting there and waiting for the right moment to be tackled. So I don't paint. It's spirit who paints through me, and uses my hand and the brushes to express something that, as you just mentioned, I'm very honored and happy about it, says something to you.
No, absolutely.
I call it spiritual expressionism, but I don't know if the category exists. But it doesn't matter if it does exist or not. We'll make it exist.
Hey, I have a question for you. You talked about being of service. I had the opportunity to speak with this gentleman, Mark Donovan, that Justin introduced me to.
Can you wave your hand so I know where it's coming from? Who's talking?
John, sorry.
John, yes.
So I had a question. You were talking about being of service to other people and humanity. I had the opportunity to speak with one of Justin Breen's contacts. His name's Mark Donovan, and he runs, it's called the Denver Income Project. And it's basically working with homeless people where you give them 1,000 people a month and to get their lives back on track. And it's all about the compound effect of, you change one person's life, who changes a family, who changes a neighborhood. So you're almost starting from the bottom up of one person creating a community. Obviously, a lot of people on this call are tied into a lot larger scale globally, as far as being able to reach audiences, people with their network technology platforms, etc. What's kind of your, I guess, 2 cents and take on what's the best way to approach being of service to other people? Or is it a combination of both? Because you're obviously a very well-known doctor and publisher as well.
So let me give you a personal example. I started teaching seminars in the 70s, and it was in a few countries in South America. Of course, the seminars had a payment value, but my addition was how many hours we spend together. I need you to volunteer. And volunteer in orphanages, nursing homes, and the difficult situation under military dictatorships, prisons, when we were allowed. So we would go with presents, let's say, to an orphanage and activate a conversation with these kids based on what people had learned in a retreat or in a seminar, so as to activate their individuality, their humanity. And we would get transformations such as this. I am not an orphan anymore. I am a human being. Now, please take your toys and clothes that you brought us and use them for the next orphanage, because you've given us more than the toys. I have this in writing in hundreds and hundreds of kids. Then we would take those kids, which were now, quote, human beings and not anymore labeled as orphans, to a nursing home and create a party so that this had grandparents, and this grandparents, this nurse people in ages that were higher than I'm even today, would have grandchildren and would dance and play together. We did that in a few cities in Chile, Colombia, Venezuela, Nepal, India, Washington, D.C., Argentina, and Uruguay. And this is a long time ago, because in 1987, I think it was, we got the Messenger of Peace Award from the United Nations for that particular service and that particular work.
That's amazing. And
it was very satisfactory too.
Well, and there's nothing people in nursing homes want to experience more than joy, and to be able to just have those orphans feel their worth again and be able to give it to their community. It's like by affecting one life, you're affecting 100 people's lives.
Yes. Certain processes, there are certain retreats that I do. One of them, it's called the psychospiritual integration process, in which we have a branch of service happening during the retreat, in which we go either to a homeless shelter or like that exists here. And today it's very difficult to get in because everybody's very suspicious, but we still manage it. And the purpose of that process is to balance. We grow up physically. That's clear. We age, or we call it that way. We grow up emotionally to the extent that we have experienced love in our preteen years. If not, we get stuck in a persona that is trying to compensate the trauma and the pain of that time. We don't grow up, therefore, socially, in which compassion and empathy and the actions that come out of that are prevalent, because we need emotional maturity to have social maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have intellectual, that usually the growing up of intellectuality, with exceptions of group that talk like you guys are talking, are the result of college or a profession and the stuckness with that role. Engineers talk like engineers and doctors talk like doctors, and everybody's in that frame of reference. And then finally, we have spiritually growing up, which is not an aging process, but a becoming aware that in that thing that I was talking before about the present-centeredness, the nowness, is also eternity. And we are eternal beings. We are eternal beings of light that are not very aware of that. And when we become aware, it many times becomes an ego.
Hey, Max, you had your hand up for a while.
Where is Max?
Max is.
Oh, Maxine.
Hi, this is such a fun conversation. I have a question about influencing the field, or just like letting the field do its thing. And I'll ask through the mission I'm on, or why I feel like my purpose, what my purpose here is like I'm on a mission to facilitate 10 million intentional conversations between the world's people, across generation, across industry, across culture, because I believe that more collisions equal more collection of synchronicities, equal more people finding out the purpose of their life, equals more love. That's just what my personal experience has taught me. The more people that I interact with and integrate with, I am constantly reminded that we are all equal and we're all on this journey. But my question is like, based on your understanding of how it all kind of works, can we speed up liberation? Is it possible to speed up the collective consciousness of humanity, and increase the heart intelligence of the world? Or is that just inevitable as well? Like, can I actively influence a ripple, or is that just programmed kind of, and it will just happen as well? And I just also take the wheel. I'm always like trying to find which lever to pull in what balance. So I just love to hear you consciously talk about that.
It's a very difficult question, because I've asked the same question to myself. Is it possible? Is it possible to really affect a critical mass that we would like to have, so that the relatability amongst each other shifts? And then I look at history. I'm a history buff. And I see that intentions like the one that Maxine, you are presenting, have happened throughout all ages. And we're still in a very poorly humanly developed consciousness when we see what's happening in the war scene in the world, which is not a fight for territory. It's a fight for ideology. You know, Putin wants to have Ukraine because the Soviet Empire had Ukraine and the Romanov Empire had Ukraine at times. And it's not the land, it's the belongingness. And in the Middle East, we have a similar thing. There's sufficient land to have 2 or 3 countries prosper and flourish if they cooperate. But it's ideology that keeps them separate. And each one believes that their ideology is the right one, and therefore people die. So I know I have not answered the question, because I haven't answered it to myself, but I've bet my whole life to what you're saying, and that's all I can do. Continue presenting my work and presenting my alternative. And I think that I not helped, but facilitated for a lot of people a more stable identity. Because you see, we are in a crisis of identity. Human beings don't know who they are, and therefore identify with the latest thought process that crosses their mind, be it sexual, be it social, be it financial, be it educational. And there's a very good book that I highly recommend to everybody, written in the 13th century by a man called Faraduddin Attar, a Sufi, that is called The Conference or the Parliament of the Birds. And in synthesis, there is 40 birds that have gathered to find out who is the king of the birds, who is the real king. And they begin their journey. And they all start very well. I would say it in personal ways, they start working on themselves. And one gets a job in one branch and settles on that branch and doesn't advance anymore, even though she has advanced from the root to that branch. The second one falls in love and establishes a nest and stays there and doesn't advance. And the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one, and they all settle for less than the journey is on, for reasons that are apparently at that moment very valid. But at the end of the game, they don't find out who's the king of the birds. And there's only one who reaches destination. And that goes in synchrony with many are called and few are chosen and few listen or something like that. And that one that reaches destination finds out that he's the king of the birds. No, you don't have to read the book. I summarized.
Oh, good. Thanks. Thanks for simplifying that. Maxine, I think your question was so great because I think that's what all of us in here are trying to do. Like, let's just do this faster. Why isn't everyone getting this done faster? I understand. The Carlos, you said so many great things. The one that really stuck out to me, if this is incorrect, please correct me, but my whole life has been synchronicities of not getting stuck, synchronicities of not getting stuck. Would you say and or argue or think that most people are stuck, or they're not stuck in their own way and accept that everyone is human and they're trying to be unstuck or free as well as they possibly can?
Yes and no. First of all, my thought was, who am I to evaluate it? I mean, who am I to say this person is stuck and the other person is not stuck? Because we always have surprises, you know, and then who we think was stuck suddenly had an acceleration, and who we think is not stuck suddenly stopped because she made a deal with her husband not to read poetry anymore, or some simple things that we see all the time that produces a detention, an arrest of the development. On the other hand, you use the word synchrony. I used it before, but I'd like to use another word, which is synergy. And synergy is, instead of evaluating everything from a personal way, it's being allowed to mobilize the energetic fields that we manage that could keep us stuck in an altitude that is such as to go for the highest good, not of myself only, but for the process, for all concerned. And I was speaking with someone the other day. I said, yeah, you're doing very well, but are you listening to the voices of the angels, or the voices that are all around us telling us what to activate and how to behave so that we don't create a World War III or a nuclear explosion or a racial hecatomb once again that we've done so many times? We need to wake up. And wake up doesn't mean only mindfulness to what I feel, but for you, what you feel. And that's why lately, you know, last week, Monday, I had the opportunity of speaking at University of Southern California at the Department of Psychiatry. And I had a conversation like we're having now, not a talk to the person, but eliciting that which can come out of you that can benefit us all.
Go ahead, Blake.
Say again?
I think Blake had a question.
Yeah, where is he? Brent? Or
I do have a question if Blake doesn't.
I don't know, Blake moved. Did you, oh, you're muted, Blake. Did you want to say something or no?
My screen froze for a second. I didn't realize you called on me.
oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Werder. Nice to meet you. My name is Blake Jones. I'm a registered nurse. I've, experienced a lot of death with people over the past few years since the pandemic started. And so a lot of these things you speak of, I haven't experienced it within my own being, but I've seen other people go through that process. And I do feel that we overcomplicate a lot of the things that we come into contact with in our world. And like you've been explaining to us, love is always the answer. And even as people are explaining things that frustrate them or speed bumps they come into, and we're looking for these signs, I've really noticed that every moment that I've had in my life has had significance, whether I notice it or not. And reflection has given me the opportunity to realize that. Psychedelics, even experiences I've had with psilocybin, I've come into understandings of the world that I don't think that I would have had without that. And as a nurse, it's hard for me to discuss in a public setting because it's a bit taboo. But a lot of the things that I experience, I just feel so at peace, even when it's not what I would want. And the hardest part for me is playing in the game that we've constructed here and trying to follow by the rules of being upset in certain situations, because even that people don't receive very well when you don't have that emotional response, right? And so I just kind of wonder from your perspective, how do you continue to be an active player in this game that everyone's interacting in when you notice that the answers to so many of these issues are so much simpler than anyone wants to hear? Because it almost seems like when you explain to someone that love can solve what they're going through, they get frustrated because they don't understand even how to express that. And I know that me and a lot of my personal relationships, you show people love and they feel it, but they're not able to necessarily reflect it back in an efficient manner. And if anything, that could be the most frustrating that I come into contact with. But again, I understand that we're all humans and we're imperfect, and I would never expect someone to see the world the same way as I do, but then I encounter people like you that seem pretty aligned. And so I just wonder how you continue to operate within this game in your role when you understand at a higher level of how simple our being could really be if we allowed ourselves to do that.
Blake, allow me to disagree with something you said. Everything was going in alignment, and then you said something to the effect, we're all human and we're imperfect. We are all human, true, and we are perfect. We need to discover that perfection that is the nature of our beingness and our soul. And when I hold the vision of that perfection in you, whoever the you might be, that person who is struggling and suffering, if you will, begins to open up, because I need to hold the vision of what I know. And that's what I was speaking about, the human promise. The human promise is not the sentence, we're just human. The human promise is we are human and we have infinite possibilities to develop and to open up and to discover and to reposition ourselves. I've had in my seminars people who come in very close, and I have them at a human scale. They're regularly small and they have no age constraints. So there can be an 18-year-old and a 60-year-old. We're cohabiting the planet at the same time. And we all learn from each other. Maybe the young one learned from the older one not to do what they did, and the older one learns from the younger one that there is another alternative to facing certain situations. but we're all humans in its magnificence, in its glory. And if humanity would remember that glory, we would have less problems, because if we don't treat each other as if we would meet again, then we can do anything. Horrendous things have happened. Massacres have happened. But this is a closed circle. It allows for re-encounters. It allows, if it's not with the same person, with another person, to give us another chance to wake up. And when we wake up, we have to do one thing. We have to clean up that which we have not lived in the waking state, which is our biography. And I was mentioning that process about spiritual, emotional, mental, physical maturation. And a lot of my work is directed to prepare somebody to be able to wake up. It's not that I'm going to wake her up, but the setting that is created allows for a waking up. And if you would see the letters I received, not from the orphans age 8 that I received in South America, but from people in their 50s and so on, that in a few years of inner work have completely transformed their ability of experience living, so that the things that they're trying to put up with all the time clear up in the process of living and not of surviving.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
So I'm sorry I disagreed with you.
Oh, no, I almost feel like that was just more of a clarification. I agree with your disagreement.
Wonderful.
I just had one last question, if there's time.
Yes.
How do you balance helping those around you versus helping people at scale?
What do you mean?
Meaning helping humanity versus helping the 50 people in your inner circle. Because the more that's given, the more that's expected, you're expected to give, I feel. And so how do you balance those two? Because I'd like to have more impact, and that's what I'm actively working on now, but by design, those around you will get less of you.
No, because no, absolutely not. We are in an infinite stream of consciousness. It's not a cake that we have to split between those that are closer to us, and let me say closer to us as family and friends, or further away as humanity as a whole. Let me say that I have very little power on humanity as a whole. If I would like to have Netanyahu and Putin in a room, give them some psychedelic and see if they still think the same way. As a matter of fact, some of them are legal even in Iran, because it is said that Prophet Muhammad consumed Peganum harmala, which is the substance that's at the base of ayahuasca, if you've heard of ayahuasca, or yahe, and that baseline could bring about a different consciousness. Now, I don't have that power. I don't have that. I have been in peace conferences, international peace conference. I used to be very close to Gorbachev when Gorbachev left the power position that he had in the Soviet Union. And I'm sitting in the bathroom of a conference in Poland. There's a peace conference, and I hear an arms deal taking place. As I'm sitting in the toilet, I am hearing an arms deal. So the higher influence that I thought I was having because I was a keynote speaker in my mind disappeared. So I focus mostly on people that come to my retreats and the ongoing work that I can do with them to create a value of sovereignty, a value not of independence, but of real sovereignty, so that they can connect and give at the same time. Because, you know, in our society, if you connect, you are in preparation. And if you give, you don't have a teacher because you're disconnected now. And in every traditional society, and I don't know who mentioned the word surrender, there is a surrender to a higher process. And there is also the personal creativity that you are mentioning, that you would like to be more effective.
Thank you. We have time for one more quick question. I think, Kathleen, it's all you.
Where is Kathleen?
I'm up here, or on my screen, I'm up here. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, Carlos. I can't even tell you how grateful I am to be in this meeting. I don't even know how to describe how it's impacting me, but you've answered somewhat that we're very challenged to implement this at scale to try to help people. But I'm curious, do you have a first step that you would suggest from all the way from the children to the seniors as to how to open the door to this or to a conversation? I have tried some things. I work a lot with people in the 55 to 85 age group with very closed minds. And I also have some amazing grandkids. So the question's personal, but I'm hoping it helps others too.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind and to heart to me is take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Don't stop your work on yourself, because it is less than what we can do in action with our kids, or in your case, grandkids or other people, than be a living example. And when we are a living example, not everybody, not every kid, and I can tell you personally, I wish I would have the same returns in the stock market as I have with my kids. I have a 75% return. I have 3 kids that are in full alignment with consciousness and one with whom I don't get so well along. But I cannot stop myself. I cannot stop working on myself. I'm a beginner. And I have to continue being a beginner's mind, to do my meditation regularly, do my journaling and evaluate where I'm off and where I'm on. Do my personal work so that when I have an encounter with others, I can emanate myself the best I can, so that if it serves others, they can take it. And if it doesn't serve others, I will not impose it, because it's an opportunity to work. I had the occasion when the Dalai Lama once, with whom we established a close relationship after a conference, that I was on the medical part and he was on the spiritual part, and so was Mother Teresa and Sai Baba, if you ever heard, long ago, 35 years ago in India, in Bangalore. And he recommended I see his doctor. And I'm going to finish with that. I went to see his doctor, and his doctor spent 45 minutes in each pulse taking of every arm, of every forearm, and then sent me some grains and didn't ask me anything about myself. And I had to have the patience of sitting an hour and 40 minutes with him and be there. And that's important, maybe, Kathleen, that instead of trying to change the world, we try to be as much ourselves as we can be, and the world will change to the extent of our reach of action. I am honored that you guys have done these questions, and Justin to Sarah to create it, and Eric to introduce me to Justin. A lot of good things have happened through Justin in my life. He introduced me to someone that I want to honor, Jennifer Hill in Portugal. And in May, we had a podcast coming out, and she introduced me to someone in Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Melbourne, and we had fantastic conversations. So without efforting, the word is spreading.
Thank you, Carlos. We really appreciate you. And perhaps we'll do this again, because I'm sure there are more questions. I think Eric wanted to close us out really quickly here, because I know everyone's got meetings. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I know Justin's got to go, but yeah, real quickly, if anybody's interested in hearing Carlos speak some more, we have some other potential events coming up. They're EO events. It doesn't matter if you're an EO or not. I'll still send you the invite and anything. Just shoot me an email. I put my email in the chat. Just shoot it and say that you'd like to hear more of Carlos, and I'll put you on the list.
And I would like to say, and it'll sound like marketing for one only reason, because it is, I have a retreat coming up in California, July 11 to 14, on the path of love and extra-dimensional awarenesses, non-ordinary states of consciousness, and the presence of guides that are not physical, that I would highly recommend you look, I don't know if Justin got the advertising, but you can look at my website for the July event, and my website is very simple. It's drwarter.com, www.drwarter.com.
Thank you so much for being here.
Much love to all of you. Have a wonderful day.
You too, guys. Thank you.